My goodness, my goodness. We now know the final four. And as we do this live on Sunday night, yes, UConn. Holy cow. What a finish for Connecticut, aka UConn. Down by 15 points at halftime, down by 6 points with under a minute to go. Finds a way to win in regulation on a last second 3-point bomb. Is it the 36-year revenge for Christian Laettner beating Connecticut for Duke? I would think UConn fans would probably agree with that. It is college basketball coast to coast, and we are live on this Sunday night as Connecticut and earlier in the day, Michigan have joined Arizona and Illinois in the Final Four. I am merely the somewhat capable host, TJ Rives. Hello, Jason Powers. Wow. The floor is yours. Wow.
I mean, what's there to say? The freshman from Greenfield, Indiana, the kid that
you're my Indiana guy. You heard of Greenfield? Where is Greenfield?
I have never heard of Greenfield.
Okay, we got to look for that. We got to look for that.
But the kids had some moments throughout the year, and we'll get into the last sequence there. But man, if you're watching the first 18 minutes of that game, 20 minutes of that game, there isn't a person on the planet that thinks Duke's going to lose this game today. They were so efficient offensively. They were just carving Connecticut's defense up. Give Connecticut credit. They hung in there. They got some production out of a couple of guys. Malachi Smith came in and played for Demery until the end, where Demery then made a couple shots. And Terrace Reed was tremendous in the low post to keep UConn from being down 30, which they easily could have been if Reed doesn't play as well as he did the first 35 minutes of the game.
It is an amazing night for Connecticut to go back to the Final Four. I put it up on the screen for the video audience. Thank you for finding us on all the social platforms tonight on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. If you're hearing us after the fact, a little time displaced on podcast or on the TuneIn streaming channel of College Basketball Coast to Coast. We were a live video show, so I put it up on the video show. They stormed back. They took this away. Duke helped them some in the end, which we will talk about, but UConn could have rolled over and croaked, not unlike what happened with Tennessee today, where they're down by 20 and it became 25, it became 30, it became game over. UConn, too much heart. Several of these guys have been in these situations time and again. Braylon Mullins obviously is brand new, but guys like Reed and Caravan and Ball have been there over and over and over again, and they did not give up. What a night, and UConn is back in the Final Four for the third time in 4 years after the back-to-back titles in 23 and 24. So we're recapping that game. Let me say further that Vince Ferrara, our guy in Chicago, he witnessed the bludgeoning of the Tennessee Volunteers as he works for Knoxville radio station 99.1 FM, the Sports Animal, as the morning host. He was there on hand at the United Center. He saw Michigan firsthand. He'll tell us more about that later in the show. And then we are efforting, you love my word, Jason, to have Deshaun Tate join us when all the post-game aftermath and press conferences are over. Deshaun Tate from the Capital One Arena in downtown D.C. You think Deshaun's got some things to say about what he witnessed firsthand tonight with the UConn comeback? Stay tuned, as that's coming up here on College Basketball Coast to Coast. Repeat again here another thought or two on Duke having multiple chances to potentially put this at arm's length, and whether it was a turnover, a missed free throw, or then just, I think the only way you can really say it is just brain dead at the end of the game. They panicked on why give the ball up in the backcourt when UConn's going to foul you.
And I also was a little surprised, why didn't Duke call timeout when they cut it to 2? You could have called timeout and designed an inbounds play on the baseline and reinforced to your freshmen, freshmen for the most part, hey, guys, we want them to foul us. We don't need to be passing the ball around 4 or 5 different times to risk a tip ball, a deflection, to reinforce. And you've made the note. Shire's had some issues with late game, getting the ball to the finish line here. Was a little surprised they didn't call timeout there to really reinforce what they wanted to do.
Yeah, it was crazy that they inbounded the ball, and Carlos Boozer had it in his hands with the trap coming. He gave it up, I believe, to Evans. Who quickly fired it up court. I think Evans could have held the ball and he would have been fouled with about 8 seconds left or 7 seconds left. And then the brother, Caden Boozer, has the ball in his hands. There's now about 5.5, 6 seconds left. And all he has to do is hold the ball, and they're going to foul him.
Right.
And instead, he's got 2 players up court, thinks he can make the hero pass to Gongba, I believe, on the right wing in the front court. And I don't know who got his hand. Was it Demry that got his hand on the ball? I don't know who got his hand on the ball. Right,
he and Mullins were trapping Boozer. Boozer.
Jason, just hold the ball, and you're going to get fouled.
Yep.
What a collapse in that instance as UConn gets the steal. Mullins said after the game he gave it up to Karaban because he thought Karaban was going to go for it for the winning shot. Instead, Karaban gave it back to him for about a 28 to 30-foot shot that will live forever, with UConn winning this game on a 3-pointer with under a second to play, under half a second to play.
And give Karaban all the credit. The senior who's won 2 national titles, he very easily could have thought in his mind, if I get the ball, I'm forcing one up to try to win the game. But he saw Mullins was coming up kind of like Chris Jenkins in the Villanova, Carolina, where he saw Mullins with his momentum coming forward, kind of led him right into the catch. Mullins had an easy, uncontested, 30-footer, and you and I know these guys nowadays are making 30-footers very regularly, even at the college level, especially when your momentum is going towards the basket. It was just kind of a momentum shot. It was not a 1-foot shot. It was not a heave. It was an in-rhythm, boom, pull the trigger, and Mullins was nothing but bottom, and that UConn bench went nuts.
Rightfully so. Now, you mentioned the Chris Jenkins Villanova play to beat North Carolina. Epic finish to the 2017 championship game. I was right there to watch all of that. Actually, the 2016, championship game in Houston.
10-year anniversary.
And that was designed, by the way, out of a timeout by Jay Wright. That is a play that Villanova worked on throughout the year in practice, etc., to run the trailer behind for Jenkins to shoot the shot, running behind Archie Diacono and flip it behind. Obviously, UConn didn't have any time on a broken play to run anything that was executed, but it's still nonetheless just an epic moment. I mentioned it at the top of the show. Didn't we leave the air last night talking about 36 years ago, Christian Laettner beat Connecticut by 1 on a give-and-go inbound play? To win it by 1 for Mike Krzyzewski's team to go to the Final Four in 1990 against Jim Calhoun and company. And now it is over a quarter of a century later. We get something similar, crazy, in Washington, D.C. with a UConn 15-point comeback. What a night. What a night tonight. Again, thank you for finding us. We will rock on here for a little bit in the aftermath of this game. Jason, give me some more on how Connecticut did this. This game had it all in the regional final, in the East Regional Final in Washington, D.C. I'll tell you one stat that I'll lead you in with. How about this? Connecticut began the game 1 of 18 from three-point range, but then at the end of the game hit 4 of their last 6 three-pointers. Demry hit 2 of them. Karaban hit a big one with under a minute to go, and then Mullins the last one. They don't want to talk about the first, I'd say, 35 minutes, maybe 36 minutes trying to shoot threes when it was a brick fest. But, man, when it mattered the most, they look like a championship team with that.
And as bad as UConn was playing early in well into the second half, they only turned the ball over 5 times in the game. So they weren't, our point of hanging in there in the second half, they could have, again, down 10, 12, 13, a lot of that second half, they could have got lazy, could have got desperate, could have got, frenetic. They didn't turn the ball over. They kept feeding Reed. Reed was excellent the first 10 minutes of the second half, scoring the ball in the low post. And, again, they got contributions from more. They got Malachi Smith comes in for Demry, scores 9 points. Ball had 10 points. Mullins had 10, and then Reed with 26. So, Karaban only scored 5 points tonight. You would never have thought they were going to beat Duke with Karaban only scoring 5 points tonight. They got some contributions from some other guys, and they kind of kept – and how about keeping Isaiah Evans in check? He only had 7 points. And Ngongba only had 6 points. So Caleb Foster, who was the difference in the Sweet 16, 0, goose egg. So
Didn't play a lot in the game too, which tells me again that foot probably,
yep,
I don't know this, and we're not orthopedists, that foot was probably bothering him the last day and a
yep,
half since the game on
yep,
Friday night. And he was not much of a factor at all, didn't show explosiveness. They weren't playing him in the second half.
yep.
So he wasn't much of a factor at all. But again, UConn very much the factor with the names like Dimry, Ball, Terrace Reed underneath. They had no give up tonight, and they are going crazy in New England over this team. They're going crazy at CBS because I guarantee you the last hour of that game had ratings through the roof. We'll wait for
Yep.
the official number. And what a finish. You mentioned the Chris Jenkins shot earlier. That's what Braylon Mullins is going to be remembered along with. Now, keep in mind, you know this, but I'm saying it for the audience. Chris Jenkins' shot won the national championship.
Right, I
That's
get
a
it.
different level up here. The Derek Wittenberg play to Lorenzo Charles for NC State with Jim Valvano. That won the national championship. But we talked about the Leitner moment 36 years ago. That won the game for Duke just to go to the Final Four.
Correct.
We've seen other epic moments. Remember, Luke May of North Carolina won a regional final for North Carolina against Kentucky with about a 15-foot shot with a second left to beat Kentucky in the South Regional and go to the Final Four. We've seen situations like this before with a last-second shot to put your team in the Final Four.
And obviously, Leitner in 92 against Kentucky. I mean,
correct. Same thing. 1 second left. Grant Hill made the pass. Grant Hill on the call tonight for CBS with Bill Raftery and with Ian Eagle for CBS. And these things amazingly have ways of evening themselves out. And that certainly evened it out for UConn tonight in the comeback. But we've seen some epic moments in regional finals before you ever even get to the Final Four. A last-second shot to win a game like this. And Braylon Mullins now joins that list that we were just going over.
And we were hyping up the group of death all week, and it lived up to it. We had two great Sweet 16 games, involving, the St. John's losing and Michigan State losing. We went right down to the wire. And then obviously this game, we did not have a great Elite Eight game other than this one tonight. So CBS, you mentioned that they're loving it, loving life. The UConn, I know there's some social media, and I know you didn't like this social media, that if UConn gets to the Sweet 16, they get to the Final Four. And once again. So
and that's true. That part is true. Danny Hurley now improves to 17-3, by the way, in the NCAA tournament. If you need him, 17-3. I went to public school. I believe that's 85% winning percentage. That's pretty good. And UConn has now won 20 games in a row beyond the Sweet 16, but that also goes back previously to Kevin Ollie winning games as the UConn coach before Danny Hurley and winning the national championship. So however you slice it, it's a tremendous comeback for them. They were dead. They were dead in this game and rose from the dead to win it.
And I would say Duke, with as much success as they had this year, 35-2 going into this game today, they had not had a lot of late game pressure. We saw in the first round of the ACC tournament game, almost blew it to Florida State, kind of a similar situation.
Right.
They've not been in a lot of games in the last 5-8 seconds where it's a one possession game and you got to ice it.
True, not recently. Go back to the North Carolina loss in February, which was a similar meltdown where they were up by 6 or 7 points in the final minute, and eventually Seth Trimble won the game down by 2 with a 3-pointer with a second to go, won the game. You go back to their December game, which is a long time ago, at Madison Square Garden against Texas Tech. They were up 10 in the final 3 minutes, and Texas Tech got the game tied and won the game in overtime. You go back to the national semifinal, the Final Four game last year. Different players, same coach, John Shire.
Right.
They were up by 7 with a minute and a half to go and coughed that up, and Houston beat them, made the plays, made a couple of clinching free throws, and won that game. This is something that's going to continue to get brought up here over the last couple of years of sample size, that when they have lost it in a similar crazy way in the final minute of the game, Duke, and it happened again tonight.
No doubt. I'll be, and again, maybe Deshaun can give us some insight. It'll be interesting to see if Shire addressed that post game. I'm sure somebody asked him probably about the last sequence, and I just don't understand what Boozer was trying to do. I mean, when they got the ball to midcourt, basically, they didn't even have to cross midcourt. There was only 10 seconds left in the game.
Correct.
They didn't even have to cross midcourt if they didn't want to.
Hold the ball, and they're going to foul you.
Right.
And it just reinforces, I mean, this is 2020 hindsight. They don't work on it enough. They didn't talk about it enough in the huddle to be prepared, because bear in mind, Evans has it in the backcourt first, and he's an 85% free throw shooter.
Right.
And he gave it up to give it to Boozer to get it up ahead.
Right.
And he didn't hold the ball either. And UConn benefits from the deflected ball, the broken play, and Braylon Mullins is the hero. Incredible stuff. Again, Vince Ferrara will join us in just a few minutes to talk about the Midwest Regional blowout win by Michigan. We'll get to that. For those that are just joining us, we'll keep it right here on the UConn Duke subject, as once again, the Huskies have come storming back to go to the Final Four for the third time in 4 years. We got a lot of audience joining us in the recent. I do see that. Is it revenge for Christian Laettner 36 years later when Duke beat Connecticut at the Meadowlands at the old Brendan Byrne Arena by 1 on the give and go inbound for the Laettner win to go to the Final Four in 1990? How about that? 36 years later, none of these players were alive.
No.
And here we are 36 years later. We see UConn get it done with the freshman from Indiana, Braylon Mullins, hitting the game-winning three-point shot.
How did you think the game was officiated with your buddy Roger Ayers on the call?
Yes, there were a couple of shaky moments, but overall, I don't think I mean, the Cam Boozer lowering of the shoulder about midway through the second half looked like that should have been a charge. Right. Instead, it was a big layup for Duke. But this was more about Duke squandering, missing a couple of free throws, 2 bad turnovers late in the game. Boozer fell over with about 2 minutes left, unforced, fell over and lost the ball.
Then on that same sequence, ball goes up for the 3-point play. He draws the foul and lays it in.
Yeah, big swing. Evans lost the ball on his own on another play. They're going to look back at these 2 or 3 minutes at the end of the game and say, squandered opportunity.
Why Foster maybe wasn't in the game in the last couple of minutes, a little more stabilizing force at point guard. I know his foot might have been bothering him, but they didn't need him to score at that point. It was more, just run the offense and get a decent shot up, because if you don't turn the ball over, you're going to at least burn 25 seconds on the shot clock, which gives UConn even less time to get back in the game. So a little surprised Foster was sitting on the bench the last couple sequences.
UConn again back in the Final Four for the first time since the back-to-back national championships.
You think Danny Hurley's talking some smack at the press conference?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he was composed with Tracy Wolfson immediately after the game, as you would expect him to be. He said, credit Duke, they're an amazing team, but we just had I'm paraphrasing, we had no give up. We kept fighting, and he goes, I got veteran guys, and we were not going to give up, and they did not give up. They showed the heart of a champion. Most teams in that situation are going to roll over, especially against a great team like Duke. They're not built that way. They are built differently, and you got to kill them. You got to drive the stake through the heart, brother, and kill them. And Duke did not do that to put the game away tonight. And as you see on the screen, they're back in the Final Four once again by virtue of that win. And we keep quoting the stat. Look at Danny Hurley once again, is 17-3. In the NCAA tournament in his career as a coach at UConn. Incredible stuff.
Tell the people the stat of the number 1 seeds leading at the half by 15.
How about when the number 1 seed, since the field expanded to 64 teams, this is 1985, when the number 1 seed led by 15 or more at halftime, 134-0 until tonight. It's now 134-1. Because of UConn. That is amazing. And John Shire's got to wear it right now. As much as it stings, he's got to wear it, and his team's got to wear it for what happened. Incredible here this evening. So we've talked a lot about what UConn was able to do. We should also make mention that the Michigan Wolverines are in the Final Four, Jason Powers. And let's talk some more about that with a guy who was right there in the United Center in Chicago. I love Vince Ferrara for a lot of reasons, but he's had a busy day today. He's been covering the aftermath of the game with Tennessee being blown out by Michigan, and now he is gracious. I've been saying, Vince, you don't have to come on tonight. I totally get it if you got other things going on. He's like, no, I want to come on and give you some perspective, especially on Michigan and what they did. So wait no further. Here's Vince Ferrara with us live on college basketball coast to coast from the United Center in Chicago. Actually, I think you've actually gotten back to the hotel now at this point. Good to have you. We're going to talk about what happened with Michigan and Tennessee earlier in the afternoon, but we aren't covering up for what we just saw, and we want your take. Amazing comeback for UConn. Vince, give me some takes.
Yeah, that to me, that speaks to one, UConn's experience and having been there and being able to figure those things out. I mean, we started out, 1 of 18 from 3 before they started finally hitting a couple, and they made a couple in a row, and just never know how that gets guys going. And, they have a lot of talent, whether it's guys in roles or it's Caravan. There's still talent there, even though Hurley's been frustrated with this team. It wasn't that late in the year where he was like, we're not a very good basketball team, and he was just venting and all that. But, man, some of these coaches that ripped their teams found ways to reach them, and they still, had faith in him and trusted him. And not every coach that rips their teams does that or has that connection that they show the coaches invested in them, and he still loves them even though he's being super critical of them. And that was the case with Hurley. But in this one, I think that also speaks to Duke. I did not think that they were the strongest of the 1 seeds. I didn't think they were the best team. They were the number 1 overall. But we were talking about it on the shuttle back with Trey Wallace from Outkick and Fox Sports, and when they're playing at their best, and I know we'll get to Michigan, I think Arizona and Michigan playing at their best are the 2 best teams. Now, I'm not just saying that because they're the 2 1 seeds alive. I have felt that way. Their ceiling was higher and better. Duke showed some susceptibility, and I think their route was through Cam Boozer for success. Those other teams, they have a multitude of ways to be able to beat you. So a little bit of the experience and a little bit of the lack of killer instinct and level for a Duke. I don't think Michigan and Arizona blow that 19-point lead to UConn.
All right, so back to you, because we've said a lot about this. The broken play at the end of the game, Vince. Give me a take. An outsider objective take. We're outsiders. We don't have a rooting interest in how this happens. Although, Powers, I may or may not have clinched a certain contest that you and I are in, because I would have had the Final Four had Duke won the game. So I did have sort of an interest in that. But Braylon Mullins hits that shot on the broken play. Vince, what about the play, and what about now the epic list that it joins on making a play like that at the end of a massive NCAA tournament game?
Well, I'll be honest with you, because we're headed back from postgame. I haven't seen the lead up to the May 3. I saw the 3, but there were some pockets in there where I missed, where I was still traveling.
So I'll
back.
describe it for you and the audience that didn't see all of it on the sequence. And Jason, help me. I think it was Demery at the line. He missed the first free throw. He made the second free throw to make it a 2-point game.
10 seconds left in the game.
Right at 10 seconds left in the game, and Duke has an inbound. And Jason, correct me, Duke did have a timeout. We got to double check on that. So they could have taken the timeout 94 feet away, elected not to do that. They inbound the ball to Boozer, and that starts the crazy sequence where Carlos Boozer gives the ball up, Vince, and then Evans, the inbounder, has the ball, and he fires it ahead to Caden Boozer, the freshman younger brother, the smaller player. Now there's about 6 seconds left, and that's where the mayhem ensues, because Caden Boozer doesn't hold the ball to get fouled when there's a 999 chance out of 1,000. That's exactly what UConn's about to do. Grab him and foul him. He releases the ball. It gets deflected. The mayhem happens. So I've described the end sequence. Give me the reaction to all of that and the result.
Yeah, some panic in there from from a young player that hasn't been. He filled in there obviously for Foster, but just hasn't been in those critical end of game situations. And honestly, Duke hasn't had a lot of those. Like some of
Right.
these Big 10 and Big 12 teams, they're a little bit more battle tested in some of these really high leverage, as we say in baseball, moments. And Duke didn't have a whole lot of those this year. And I don't think the younger Caden Foster, I don't think he had the experience in that moment. So, and then here's another thing, and we've seen that in college basketball. You can call a time. If you call a timeout, you can run through all those reminders.
Exactly.
And some coaches just want to trust their guys and live in the moment. But man, especially when you have some young players on the court, I'd rather remind them. Of course, that's not a guarantee, but it just increases your percentage that guys won't have a brain fart and melt down with all that's at stake.
Panic is a good word to use, and Duke did at the end after being up by 15 points at the half. We repeat again, no one seed ever, Vince, since the field expanded to 64, now 68 teams, has blown a 15-point halftime lead. They had been 134-0. It's now 134-1.
In any games, in any NCAA tournament games?
In any NCAA tournament game, when the one seed has been up by 15 or more at the half, they were 134-0 until tonight. Until that happened. It's crazy.
I know who the 134th was.
Which is?
I was there.
I believe that was earlier in the day. That's a good segue. Michigan whipping up on Tennessee to reach the Final Four. Again, I give you full credit for being here. You've been covering the aftermath, the locker room, the downer end to what was a really good season for Tennessee and a good run in the NCAA tournament. So let's spin it this way. You have now seen Michigan firsthand in person twice. How good are they? How good were they today, Vince?
They're good in different ways when you see them. They gave up threes against Alabama, and it wasn't their best defensive effort by any means, but they always have answers. That's part of what you have to in college basketball. I think to be championship teams, you have to be older and you have to have answers. And Michigan has many answers, whether it's Yaxel, whether it's Mara inside. By the way, Mara is the king of elbows. Like that guy is so big, and yet this is his offense.
He's like all elbows, right?
Yeah.
In person.
Yes, it is more noticeable in person than it is on TV. And it's Cadeau, and he does a great job of running the point. There's connections between these two teams. Felix Okpara's roommate at Ohio State when they were both there was Roddy Gale Jr.
Right.
And Roddy Gale Jr. Again made some 3-point shots, and they just have McKinney is a freshman that just great body. He's going to be great. He can shoot the three. They have so many guys that can make plays for them and be threats offensively. You want a double Yaxel, you want to do whatever in defensively. There's always someone else that can step up in the moment, and they avalanche you. And TJ, you mentioned that this is the way Michigan was playing, especially earlier in the year.
Yes,
a good part of Big Ten play, where you just can't stop the momentum against them. They went on a 21-0 run.
Say 21, yep.
It was 16-14 Tennessee, almost halfway through the first half, and they were. And
then it's 37-14.
Three touchdowns later, it's 35-14.
Just like that. And there's plenty of Michigan offenses in years past, other than their championship team, that would like that kind of offense in a hurry. They can get out in transition. They defend. They can shoot like no other. I think they came in the game averaging like 95.3 points per game. They can play a slow, grind it out if you want to do that, because Tennessee had them in that kind of game earlier. Yeah. the way out when they played Alabama, they didn't get baited into a 3-point contest. They actually made as many threes as Bama and made it at a higher percentage, but they weren't forced threes. They were rhythm threes. They were transition threes. And then the extra pass.
They don't care who shoots it, Vince. They don't care who gets the better shot.
Exactly. And look, Tennessee, I think, deserve credit for beating Iowa State because they did that in that game. The extra pass a good shot, pass up a good shot for a great shot. But Michigan does it, and then the crisp passing. I mean, you send it out to the 3-point line, and it's already on its way to the next guy in line, and then a quick dart pass inside. And Tennessee helps a lot defensively, and they're able to get out into driving lanes, but then in 3-point shooters. But when Michigan moves the ball like they did, it's impossible for anyone to do that. So they just have many, many ways to beat you if there's one or two things that are off.
One of those ways, I put it in the graphic right down below us, Yaxel Lindeborg. You saw him now for 2 games, former UAB player. How about 12 months ago at this time, his season ended meekly with UAB losing in the American Conference Tournament. There was some talk, might he turn pro and be available for the NBA draft? Instead, Michigan wins a bit of a mini bidding war, a mini bidding war, and gets him to come to Michigan. How fortuitous does that look with the way that guy has played the last 90 days? He's the Big Ten Player of the Year, having never set foot in the conference till November. He's the Big Ten Player of the Year. And today, the stat line for the audio audience hearing us later is 27 points, 7 boards, 4 assists, 2 blocks, and a steal. I didn't include that in the graphic. To me, he's a great game changer, difference maker when he's right. Vince, what do you say?
Well, he is. And honestly, to give some of the people that do the rankings for the portal, which sometimes they're spot on guys that are going to develop in basketball and in football, and other times they're way off. But despite him coming from UAB, there was a lot of expectations for Yaxel Lindeborg. So I think he played up to that. I think it took him a minute to really kind of blossom into the full all-around arsenal he has. But he did everything, whether it's shoot the 3 or drive the lane with that big body and avoid contact and score through contact, putbacks, get down in transition, just a runaway train, man, with his size and mobility. And he won the battle with Nate Ament. They weren't one-on-one because both teams switch a lot, but that was a sort of a wing type of matchup that you wondered how it would go. So yeah, he's more advanced as a player. There's plenty of analysts that have said Nate Ament's best basketball is going to be in the NBA because he's so young and raw. Well, that doesn't do Tennessee any good for right now. And Yaxel's been doing it. He's one of those older players. And so that's a huge benefit for the likes of, of Michigan and some others. You mentioned Roddy Gale. He came from Ohio State. Mara was a transfer at UCLA. Tennessee played him in the NCAA tournament.
Cadeau came from Carolina.
Yep.
Cadeau was a Carolina guy.
The Morez Johnson kid's an Illinois kid. I mean, they have gone and imported and bought their basically their core players are all bought from other programs, which is interesting. And that kind of segues as well to Dusty May, who is back in the Final Four now for the second time in 4 seasons. You actually saw at Madison Square Garden in New York the win by Florida Atlantic over Tennessee that year as well on the way to the Final Four for FAU. Now May comes to a totally different program, to Michigan, and in 2 years has molded them into a powerhouse, and they've made the Final Four. Vince, assess the job Dusty May did because you saw him again all weekend.
Yeah, and to his credit, it's a completely different style than what he had to play and what he was playing with his roster at FAU. Remember, they had small, super quick guards. They were undersized, but just really tenacious for their size and would out-quick people and, get out in transition, things like that. He's got a completely different roster because now he's got some studs in recruiting. He's got massive size that can play inside. And those are the best coaches, the ones that can adapt to their personnel, that don't just have one way of doing things. So I give them a lot of credit. And what's interesting, I was at all the media stuff yesterday in the lead in, and I was there for Dusty May and the Michigan players. And May was asked about playing Tennessee at FAU, and he said he whipped out that tape and watched some of it just for a few reminders on what's successful against Tennessee and what they do. Completely different roster, but man, if you can apply some things going back with your experiences like that. And look, Michigan is another team that has been, Dusty May, that's 2 wins for him over Tennessee in the NCAA tournament. Michigan has been an absolute nightmare for Tennessee. That's 3 straight NCAA tournament wins for Michigan head to head with Tennessee back in, I guess it was 2014, Jarno Stokes and Tennessee were down to the wire. That's when they came out of the Dayton games, first 4 games, and Michigan beat them at the end by a possession. And then a couple of years ago, Michigan led by Jawan Howard, they beat Tennessee, and then this time as well. So but Michigan is just on another level from Tennessee. So the margin of defeat is the tough thing for I think fans to swallow, because it looked like they weren't competitive. I think he just got discouraged and knew there wasn't a route back realistically, more so than quitting. Fans call that quitting. They wanted to win and they tried, but they were discouraged, and then you're just a little bit off. But Michigan puts you in that situation, that mental state of just being
my friend. They've now won 27 games by double figures, and you look at the laundry list of some of the teams. I mean, the laundry list, I got long arms. You guys know this. It's as long as my arm on some of the top teams that they have put a double digit or worse beating on, and Tennessee was just at the wrong end of it today. Jason, you got anything else here for Vince, who's been working hard throughout the afternoon and throughout the weekend? We appreciate him being with us. Anything else?
Is it a foregone conclusion that Ament goes to the NBA, or is there a chance he comes back for a second year?
Well, I was there, and he had a massive group of media around him. Felt bad for some of the other guys in the locker room, because it was like 30 people around Ament, and guys sitting around him, didn't have people asking him questions. But that is one of the interesting things about the NCAA tournament, is they require those locker rooms. It's really cool when they win. Boy, it is one of the toughest things to do in sports when you're in the media after a loss, especially in basketball situation like this, where not only you lose the game, your season is over, the finality of that, your career is over, the finality of that, never being with some of your guys, your brothers, the finality of that, and for some, maybe never playing basketball again.
True.
They realistically don't have a pro career. So, man, it's tough in those locker rooms. But Ament was asked, to your question, Jason, Ament was asked about that. He said, no decision, no timetable on decision, anything like that. So
everything we see, he's a top 10 pick. Why would he not go and start the clock to make on the second contract $250 million? It would be the shock of shocks if he does not turn pro, right, Vince? That's the vibe.
Absolutely. And look, Tennessee, they want what's best for their players and coaches. So Tennessee is going to tell him he should go. That's the way Rick Barnes and the staff is. If it's what's best for him is to start developing on the NBA level and not have school and all those other things, and if he can prosper on that level, they're going to tell him you're going to be a lottery pick or close to it. You should probably go and so do it. And that's the way Tennessee operates. I mean, look at what Rick Barnes said about his associate head coach, Justin Gainey. I don't know if you guys saw that. North Carolina State went to Chicago to talk to him, basically interview him.
And Barnes allowed it. Barnes allowed it to happen while they're in the tournament, while they're still alive this weekend.
Yeah. And maybe it was a meeting versus a full-fledged 3-hour interview, because Barnes relies on those guys to do scouts. Now, maybe Gainey didn't have the scout for Michigan because they got big staff. So, but Gainey puts in so much work. Even if he talked to NC State over dinner. I don't think that takes away from this team. So Barnes wants all his guys to be head coaches. He praised them. He said about Gainey that, look, he is I hope he gets the North Carolina State job. He said if they knew what I knew, they would be begging him to take their job. So he said he's ready to be North Carolina State's coach, Tennessee's coach, any program in the country. But that's the way it is. If it's best for someone to move on, then he's going to suggest that. And my guess is in real moments and sitting down, they'll pray about it because both of them are big on their faith. But then he would tell them, you're
ready to go do this?
You should go. Yeah, you should go. And one thing, Rick Barnes also was asked, because I think you guys have asked me, and I've been asked in a bunch of interviews, Rick Barnes, yes, look at the graphic because he is all over it. TJ Rives runs a professional
hey, we've done this long enough. You knew where I was headed, and you can go ahead and get there on Rick Barnes. Go.
Yeah, sorry about that. I started talking about it, and then I saw your graphic, so sorry if took away your lead into me. But yes, he was asked, are you 100% on coming back to Tennessee next year? And he says, yes, I am. And actually, I think that Tennessee is pretty happy that Rick Barnes was asked that, and he had the answer. And why would that be? So it ends the speculation. It ends the speculation of media people talking about it because they always do. Even if he hasn't given any hints that he's going anywhere, everyone, because of his age, always is going to ask about it. But here's the most important thing, recruiting. Because if there are those questions being asked, the portal, high school players, if there are those questions lingering out there, schools are going to try to use it against you in recruiting and negative recruit you. And him getting that question and answering that question the way he did wipes that out. And then now that will help them and being able to hit the portal because they will need to. There's a lot of their key players that are moving on for various reasons.
Love this man hanging with us. My goodness. We got a meal on us upcoming when you're back here in T-Town in Tampa Bay at some point. I love it. Thank you. I again publicly say, after what you had to do and cover and the long weekend you've had, this is an extra step for us. We appreciate it on college basketball coast to coast for you to hang with us from Chicago, being right there in the middle of all of it. I wish it was a better outcome for Tennessee. I've said this to you for 3 years in a row. I wish it was a better outcome and you would be at the Final Four and we'd be there together and then you could cash that meal ticket then. But it doesn't happen again this year. Unfortunately for the Bulls.
Still haven't been to the Final Four, but hope you guys have a blast there.
Safe travels, boss. Safe travels driving home.
Yep. Doing the show from here tomorrow morning, thankfully, and then hopefully a couple 2-3 hours sleep, and then hit the road with my golden doodle Daphne.
There you go.
That a girl.
We'll be good.
You and Daphne have traveled the Eastern and Central time zone a bit here in March to this point. Great work. And again, he's on 99.1 FM. The Sports Animal is the morning show host 5 days a week with John Wilkerson. Sports Talk with John and Vince. They're on 99.1. Yeah, it's down in the mouth after what Michigan did, but just one more time in parting, Tennessee had a tremendous run here in this tournament to beat Virginia and then to beat Iowa State. They were bidding to become did you hear this stat? They were bidding to become the first team since LSU and Dale Brown 1986 to beat the 3, the 2, and the 1 in a regional. That's what they were trying to do. It still holds 40 years later that LSU of 1986 is the last team to beat a 3, a 2, and a 1 in a regional after they beat Virginia and after they beat Iowa State. And then stay tuned for Michigan. I don't know who's beating Michigan. Maybe it is Arizona. We'll see. But Vince, final thought on Tennessee's season, and then we'll let you get out of here.
Yeah, what they did was they lived up to preseason expectations, but they overachieved what the realistic entering the tournament expectations were from the fan base. And honestly, the media as well that covers them because they were so inconsistent. Lost 3 of their last 4 in the regular season. Won 1-1 in the SEC tournament. I don't think anyone was thinking, even the most optimistic were probably thinking Sweet 16, but Elite 8. Not unless you just blindly were putting Tennessee in your bracket and just going off of that. So they ended up where I think a lot of people thought that they would be like a top 10 type of team, and they played that way until they ran into the buzzsaw that they saw today. So the consistency of Rick Barnes, 4 straight Sweet 16s, 3 straight Elite 8s, he's going to be one where like a Hendon Hooker or Joshua Dobbs, where those guys were not as appreciated when they were here, but as time passes and you're removed, and there's plenty of other examples for other schools, they're much more appreciated. And Rick Barnes, for some, is not as appreciated as he should be. I think when you get post Rick Barnes, and thankfully for the program, it's not going to be next year, there'll be an even greater appreciation for what he did. So, yeah, they're probably going to have another similar type of remade roster next year, but really, really good year and living up to their expectations, which not everybody can say they did.
You lived up to our expectations, my friend. Great stuff. Thank you,
It's
Vince
never
Ferrara.
work coming on with you guys. It's just chatting with the boys.
I love it. And you did great work for us on college basketball coast to coast. Be well. Safe travels back, my friend. Great stuff.
All right. Appreciate you guys. Have a great night.
There you go. There's Vince Ferrara. How about that? Deshaun Tate, we believe, is going to join us shortly from Washington, D.C. You think he might have a take or two after what we saw, Mr. Tate's take with UConn tonight?
I know you're
Jason.
I know you're a man of the ticket market. What was that ticket going for today?
I believe I saw when I looked yesterday, the get-in price was like $800, $800 in the upper level. Wow. That gives you an idea of how tough a ticket on the secondary market. Duke, UConn, thousands of dollars for the down low, lower bowl, better seats. So incredible to see that. And Jason, just repeat for the audience, we spent a lot of time there talking with Vince, and towards the end of the conversation, most of it was Michigan destroying Tennessee, unfortunately for Vince, earlier in the day. But this UConn comeback tonight has the sports world abuzz, not just the college basketball world abuzz. Down 15, they come roaring back. They hit the last second three. How did they do it?
Again, they just hung in there. They were down 15. Obviously, Terrace Reed was huge in the game. The first 30 minutes, he had ended up with 26 points. He kept them in the game. They kept making some shots. Duke, was not nearly as efficient in the second half. At one point, they had like 21 points or 22 points with like 4 minutes left in the game in the second half for Duke. So they amped up the defensive rebounding a little bit. They made some more shots. You mentioned they started 1 of 18 from the three-point line. They finished 4 of their last 5. You mentioned Caravan hit a big one. Demery hit a big one. We obviously saw Mullins hit the one at the end. So Caravan, and again, I give all the credit, a ton of credit to Caravan on the last play, because most seniors with his pedigree and his experience would have tried to force one up or take a dribble, he didn't. He gave the ball back to Mullins, who had his forward momentum coming towards the logo in stride, fed him the ball, and the kids had a really good freshman year. Mullins is a player now. He'll be their next guy at Connecticut come next year, but he just walked into a logo 3 and hit nothing but the bottom.
Did not hesitate. What an incredible moment where Duke gave the ball up a couple of times. Again, Cameron Boozer, one season only at Duke, is going to be remembered here at the end that he had the ball in his hands and gave it up. Gave it back to the inbounder Evans, and Evans gave the ball up and pushed it ahead. I understand that. But then Caden Boozer, the younger brother, doesn't hold the ball with
that
like 5 or 6 seconds
That was
left.
the egregious one.
Yeah, just hold the ball. Yes, there are players open down court, but just hold the ball, and they're going to grab you with 5 seconds left, and now you're shooting free throws, and they're in big trouble, down by 2, because you can make them both, and the game is over with.
Yep.
But the end result is the deflected ball, the broken play, the give and go. The give and go, again, is reminiscent of what we saw from Christian Laettner back 36 years ago. Is it revenge? We keep talking about this. You and I are older. The young kids, the sub 30-year-olds, the Gen Zers, they have no idea. The Gen Z has no idea what we're talking about. But go back and YouTube up Christian Laettner give and go East Regional Final against Connecticut for Mike Krzyzewski to hit the game winner with a second left to beat Jim
Calhoun. The Kentucky game winner 2 years before.
Kentucky game winner was 2 years later on the bomb three, or on the bomb shot with a second left for Leitner to beat Kentucky and Rick Pitino. He had a couple of big moments, but UConn gets their revenge all these years later.
How about Caravan?
Wild
Is
to
this his
watch.
third Final Four?
You are correct. He is
Very,
the holdover.
very, very rarefied air. Leitner, I know, went to 3 Final Fours.
Yes.
Caravan's now going to 3 Final Fours.
Because nobody stays anymore.
Right.
Nobody stays for the third year or the fourth year. It's very rare that they do.
So
as we rock on, by the way, let's tell you about one of our sponsors, shall we? And that's our friends at Go Sleeves, the kinesiology technology in the sleeves for the knees, the elbows, etc. The video audience is watching it right now on the screen. Go Sleeves does 2 or 3 things that help you. Number 1, it stimulates blood flow, the sleeve on the knee or the elbow or the calf. Number 2, it helps you with soreness and with recovery time. That's for sure. Another important thing here for the Go Sleeves is it allows you therapeutically to excel back-to-back days, 3 or 4 days in a row. The video audience is watching right now, whether you're a bike rider, a golfer, whether you're a pickleball player, weekend basketball player, etc. They've got these therapeutic sleeves. Take advantage of it. It is go time with Go Sleeves. And we remind you that we have a promo code with Go Sleeves. That promo code is TJ for 15% off with our friends at Go Sleeves. You see it right there on the screen. It is go time at Go Sleeves. Take 15% off right now at GoSleeves.com. Therapeutic stuff. We love it with Go Sleeves. They're a proud sponsor of what we do. All right, so let's talk a little more Final Four here.
By the way, I think we can make the declaration.
Yes.
UConn, Illinois will be the undercard.
It is. They have already announced this tonight, CBS, that the first game will be the UConn, Illinois game. Had it been Duke and Illinois, they would have been the late game, but that will be the undercard. And then Arizona and Michigan in what should be an epic semifinal to go to the Final Four will be the nightcap here on this.
You will be in the building.
We will be there. We will be there at Lucas Oil Stadium for these 2 matchups. Again, give Arizona credit. They came storming back down 7 at the half. UConn says, hold my beer, is the phrase that everybody uses in the present day. Down 15, coming back to beat Duke tonight and make the Final Four. So UConn, they've been a regular. They've had an engraved invitation. It's the 3rd time in 4 years for them that they are in. Michigan is back in the Final Four, as we made mention, for the first time since 2018 in San Antonio when Villanova beat them in the championship game. They had beaten Loyola Chicago in the semifinal, remember, with Porter Moser. That is Mo Wagner, and I'm trying to remember a couple of the other players on that Michigan team with John Beilein, 2018.
Yeah, that's a good question.
I do know this. Mo Wagner was the first player since Larry Bird to have 30 or more in the regional final and in the Final Four game until Walter Clayton had 30 or more in the Sweet 16, the regional final, and the Final Four game last year. Wow. As he did against Auburn. So Wagner was big on that team for Michigan in 2018. They also were in the national title game, Final Four in Atlanta 2013 in the old Georgia Dome. Louisville and Rick Pitino beat them that night. That's Beilein with Trey Burke, among others. So Michigan has some recent history in the Final Four. As for the other teams, we were talking about this last night on the program. Michigan is there along with UConn and with Arizona. Arizona's first Final Four since 2001.
Wow.
2001, they went to the national title game and lost to Duke. No Western team has won the national championship since Arizona in 1997. And where was that game, Jason Powers? Indianapolis for Arizona beating Kentucky that night. So a Western team, it's been rare that a Western team has gotten to the championship game. Arizona's not been there since 2001. UCLA got to the championship game a couple times, but hasn't won it.
Because that was the year 1997. I was a graduate student in IU, and I went up to Indianapolis for Final Four Saturday. Didn't go to the games, but was in and around all the festivities at the RCA Dome.
Yeah.
and had a brief encounter with Digger Phelps in the hallways of one of the whatever we were at. So I experienced a little bit of that in '97 when Arizona cut down the nets.
And I was not there for that. I began attending the Final Four. I did it the first time as a fan in '92 for the Duke repeat against Michigan. And then I began in '99 when UConn beat Duke in the national title game in St. Petersburg, right here at what is Tropicana Field, what was the Florida Suncoast Dome. They beat him with Khalid El-Amin and company, beating Elton Brand and Duke. And UConn continues. Hey, UConn continues some recent mastery in this thing over Duke. 2004 Final Four in San Antonio is Emeka Okafor and Duke for Calhoun, beating J.J. Redick and Mike Krzyzewski and Duke in that regional semifinal in that Final Four game. And then UConn went on to win the national title over Georgia Tech. And now they get them tonight on the last second shot by Braylon Mullins. Pretty incredible stuff. By the way, the fourth member of the Final Four is Illinois, and Illinois back in the Final Four after their win for the first time since 2005 in St. Louis. Bruce Weber, the coach, D. Brown with the headband, Darren Williams, the guard, Luther Head, the forward.
Right.
Illinois got to the title game, and Roy Williams in North Carolina with Sean May beat them in the title game. So Illinois has not been there in 21 years. Arizona's not been there in 25 years. UConn's been there 3 times now recently, and Michigan not since 2018 for the Final Four. Give me a couple other thoughts. Vince did a lot on Michigan. Tell me what you saw from them. Lindeborg, again, phenomenal.
Yep.
They got so many veteran players, 27 wins by double figures. It's almost become absurd that they've handled so many good teams by double figures, Jason.
We mentioned the point last night. In these big games, your best players have to be
your best players.
And Ament and Gillespie today in the first half, they could not make any shots. I think they were 1 for 12 at one point combined in the first half. And Vince made the great point. At 16-14, you're feeling pretty good if you're Tennessee halfway through the half. And all of a sudden, you look up and it's 35-16 because 21-0 later. And give Barnes credit. He called 2 timeouts during those runs. He did everything he could.
Yeah, right.
Stop the bleeding. His guys couldn't make shots. They got in foul trouble early. Their big guys, Okpara, Carey, had got 2 fouls in the first half. And they even got Mara with 2 fouls from Michigan, but it didn't matter. During that run is when Lindeborg really took off. I think he had 9 points and 3 assists during that 21-0 run. So he really asserted himself in the game. I thought we saw a couple of officiating gaffes in the play. We saw goaltending that wasn't goaltending. We saw another block. The one block that Lindeborg had should have been goaltending because the ball did hit the glass and they didn't call it, so they couldn't review it. So a couple little minor officiating things there. Then you saw the little dust up when Carey on the scrum, when they had the jump ball, Carey came in and gave the guy a shoulder, which he absolutely deserved the technical foul there. So I'm glad they didn't throw him out of the game. But at that point, the game was 25 points or whatever it was. So, but yeah, just Tennessee, they were going to be up against it, barring just a great shooting day, a la Villanova back in the day. They were going to have a tough time keeping up offensively.
Everybody else has too. I mean, I know Purdue got them in the Big Ten title game, but for the most part, they've handled everybody else, save for the Duke loss in February. And now we don't even get that storyline at the Final Four because Duke gave up the lead to UConn and they got beat tonight. Duke again beat Michigan head-to-head in Washington, D.C. in February in kind of a Final Four type preview. But Michigan has been really good, and give this guy credit. I know you shake your head that the Indiana Hoosiers, where Dusty May was a student, he was a manager for Bobby Knight.
Should have been the coach.
Probably would have taken the job had they fired Mike Woodson and offered it to him 2 years ago. He probably would have taken the job. They didn't do it. Oh. Indiana, they hung on to Woodson for 1 year too long for him to flounder around as an out-of-touch NBA coach and an almost 70-year-old. And Dusty May now leads Michigan in 2 short years to the Final Four, to the Promised Land. Wow.
Crazy. And by the way, the chatter of him going to North Carolina is over. He ain't going to North Carolina. because Michigan will pay him. They will, NIL money will be good at Michigan like it typically is. So I would not count on Dusty May being in the mix at North Carolina under any circumstance. So
we'll see what they end up doing. That's one of the plum jobs. All right, let's tell you about another sponsor of ours as we rock along on college basketball coast to coast, and that is Kalshi, the predictive market, the mobile app, the site. Have you gotten in on some of this? By the way, a lot of the predictive market had Duke to win the national championship. And so if you had gone against the market, you would be in really good shape if you were investing against the predictive market right now with the Kalshi mobile app. This is why it's fun to participate. Again, it's not a sports book, let's say, that's putting odds out there. It's not a bookmaker doing that. This is the public like you and me in the audience, Jason, that are voting on Kalshi on these different things: sports, props, politics, entertainment, world events, natural disasters. You can do anything you want. How long will the government shutdown continue? Well, I've talked about this prop like all year. Will Bruno Mars's new album be #1 the first week in April? It's the first week in April later this week. You could have already been participating with the voting and going against the predictive market at Kalshi. Again, the Kalshi mobile app, KALSHI, and we've got a promo code for Kalshi as well. Use the promo code TJ and you get $10 to trade with, to go fool around with at Kalshi and invest against the market. Promo code TJ at Kalshi. Predictive markets on who's going to be the coach of the year. Is that Dusty May? Is it Tommy Lloyd at Arizona? John Shire was going to maybe get a lot of run, but maybe not now. What about Danny Hurley again here at the end of the year? Some of these other coaches. Who's going to be the coach of the year? Invest in the predictive market if you so desire, or just go there and vote. Have fun with Kalshi, the mobile app and the mobile site. Promo code TJ Hoops gets you $10 to go and invest against the market. Do whatever you like with it. TJ Hoops for the promo code with Kalshi.
How many millions were watching with 5 minutes to go?
Oh, I believe, just as a reference point, 2 years ago, the Duke NC State audience, where NC State came from behind and beat Duke and went to the Final Four in Arizona, had 15 million watching. All right, last year, the lead into CBS on 60 Minutes on CBS was the Michigan State Auburn game. That's not Duke. That's not UConn. That's not Kentucky, who are brand name love-hate schools. That game averaged right at 12 million, about 3 million less. So now we're back to Duke with a love-hate opponent in UConn. I have to believe there were probably on average 17 or 18 million watching. And the finish of that game in the final half hour, I would be shocked if it's not 22, 24 million. Look out. They're measuring differently now with out of home and with analytics on streaming, but that easily had to have 20, 22 million people watching the end of that game for the UConn epic comeback tonight that puts them into the Final Four. They storm back and they beat the Duke Blue Devils. So now it is Connecticut.
Me and my father were watching the first half at a restaurant.
Yeah.
We had a little dinner, watched the first half, and then we headed home. And it was 15 at the half, and my dad and I were like, "Oh, this game's over." So I hope my father, if he didn't, I will call him. hope he kept the TV on. You got to
send Dad the message. Turn it back on. This is not Dewey beats Truman. This is not go to bed on this one with the comeback. This is not Patriots 20, Falcons 28, Patriots 3 in the Super Bowl. It's crazy what we saw tonight. So UConn will play Illinois in the first game in Indianapolis, followed by Arizona and Michigan, with Arizona seeking the first national title for a Western team since '97. Michigan seeking the first Big Ten national championship since Michigan State in Indianapolis in 2000. And now we're back in the Circle City for later on.
And I know you do a gambling show, so I'll just throw this out there. For all of our friends out there that had a Duke ticket, if you're in Vegas, you're up 15, you're up 17, and then
line was 5.
Even at the end of the game, yes, you're
line
up 5
was
or 6 with a minute
5 and a half,
to go.
something like that. Yeah.
And all of a sudden, you see and if you have a Connecticut money line ticket for some reason in this game, you and I were out there when Arizona, Iowa State in the Big 12
Big 12 tournament, right?
A wild finish. Can you imagine what those sports books exploded on
on that shot and on that finish?
Tonight.
because there was possibly overtime looming as well. I'm just looking here to see if the early lines are out, and I'm double checking. And
Let me guess. Don't tell me.
I won't tell you. What do you think? Connecticut, Illinois. There is an initial line out. What would you say that it is?
Let's say Illinois 2.
Flip it. UConn 2. UConn favored by 2, at least initially. And what would you say on Michigan with their 27 double-digit wins, and Arizona, the Big 12 regular season and tournament champs?
Dead pick 'em.
How about your close? Michigan's a 1-point favorite at the moment.
Wow.
So those are 50-50 lines that are out there from what I'm looking at least early on. And what's interesting is you may see some significant money come in right
tonight.
Now, like, the lines have probably been out for 30 minutes or an hour. And when it does, UConn might go up to a 3 or a 4-point favorite by midnight tonight. They're 2 right now. Michigan's a 1-point favorite. That might reverse. Arizona's getting a point. You might see a bunch of money come in on Arizona, and Arizona might be a 2-point favorite by later on tonight. I'm saying that. Stand by.
By the way, I didn't know this nugget. I saw this nugget about Brad Underwood.
Yes.
Do you realize he coached junior college basketball right by where we are up in Daytona?
Yes, Daytona Beach
Community College.
He was at a Kansas JUCO, at a Daytona JUCO. He coached for 26 years in junior college before getting an opportunity at Stephen F. Austin. And now he has parlayed that into the Oklahoma State job, followed by the Illinois job. And Illinois and Michigan are obviously familiar with each other. Michigan won a late season game at Champaign and clinched the Big Ten regular season title on Illinois' home floor, by the way, in late February. So if it comes to it, that would be a championship matchup if it comes to it for that. Any final thought here? We're going to get out of here in a moment. We've been here for a few minutes tonight, recapping all of this. Any final thoughts on the UConn comeback, the Michigan State blowout win, Arizona and Illinois already there in the Final Four? Anything else, Jason Powers?
I like Illinois and Arizona next Saturday. Illinois and Arizona.
Tough to argue with UConn being a team of destiny after what we saw tonight, but man, that is that is one of those where they are going to shake their head for a long time at Duke. Second year in a row. How did we let it get away in the final couple of minutes, the final minute?
Yep.
Houston last year and UConn tonight. Jason Powers, great stuff. Thank you for that. Thank you to Vince Ferrara with 99.1 FM in Knoxville. And the Sports Animal Station, the 5-day-a-week host, he was in Chicago to watch the Michigan win tonight. We thank you for watching.
You're going to hit St. Elmo's and get a little cocktail?
We got to see. Or
are you going to go in the alleyway and hang out with Mark Sanchez?
We got to go hit the spots in downtown in the Circle City of Indianapolis. We'll have another Final Four look ahead before this week and before the live shows are coming later this week on college basketball coast to coast on the live platforms. We'll be live in Indianapolis on Friday afternoon, I believe 2 Eastern time. 2 Eastern time Friday, 2 Eastern time Saturday, 2 Eastern time obviously Sunday, the day in between, 2 Eastern time Monday. Just remember 2 Eastern time for the Final Four coverage from Indianapolis that's coming later in the week. We'll do another show to kind of preview it before we head to the Circle City for the Tampa Bay area. It's never dull. I've been there in Indianapolis over and over again. I was there for that Michigan State win over Florida, by the way. I was there in the Circle City for the Gators winning the national title against UCLA. I was there for the Duke national title win over Wisconsin in 2015. Let's go back again and see what happens for UConn and Illinois and Arizona and Michigan. It will not be dull. Jason Powers, great stuff, brother. Thank you. Job well done. We thank you for watching. Find us on Pod, Apple, Spreaker, Spotify for the podcast. Find us on TuneIn on the streaming TuneIn channel, College Basketball Coast to Coast as well. And if you're only hearing us, find us on the video platforms, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter X, etc. You've been with us on the Sunday night of a wild Elite Eight comeback by UConn. UConn, Illinois, Arizona, Michigan coming in the Final Four. You've been watching and listening on College Basketball Coast to Coast.